Kia ora. The lighting is not very flattering. Look at this. I could put a hat on, but it won't match my outfit. Haha. But I want to have some good lighting to show you some things that I realize are going to appear in reverse because of showing them just to the camera here. But hopefully you will forgive this, because what I will do after this probably quite short live is I will then just film the images and show you in another really brief video. So don't be concerned about that. So what I wanted to make the topic of this live is the Odinism and the symbolism and the scene, okay? And I want to talk about that with regards very specifically to the defense's, Rick Allen's defense lawyer's Frank motion, because this is a very lengthy, very lengthy Frank motion. It's 136 pages long. But really, to me, there is a simple paragraph that is missing, that they have neglected to write, but they should have information that is at the heart of what they are alleging, and yet they don't bring the proof and the explanation. So, you know, there's so much that we could talk about. Okay, there's so many angles that people are discussing. This is an example, you know, Ron Logan, it's his land, was he there, setting the scene, etc., you know. So of course they need to provide proof that Richard Allen knows Ron Logan, or indeed if Richard Allen knew Brad Holder, for example. There's no proof and lots of gossip. That's not what I'm going to talk about here. I'm just giving it a few minutes, okay? You know, gossip about Richard Allen going to rehab soon after the murders, and maybe being in rehab when the motorcycle parade was on. He was a heavy drinker. What type of drunk was he? He did change his appearance afterward. You know, his weight and his beard. Anyway, I'll just get on with what I wanted to talk about. It doesn't matter who's here, because this is just going to be dithering along with just some things I had noted, and it won't mean anything to anyone. Maybe actually I will start again. I won't. All right, so let's just quickly start looking at this Frank motion. So the crux of the Frank motion, this is coming from Richard Allen's defense team, and it is using information that's come from the investigation. So it's not something that they've written as if it's like a closing argument or an argument at the start of a trial. It's something that they have written up, and now it's been released. I don't know if it was leaked or what, but what they want is they want the search warrant against, you know, Richard Allen and his property. They want that thrown out as being unlawful, and if they can get that thrown out, etc., they want to domino into having Richard Allen, you know, having charges dropped, okay? Because Richard Allen won't want to be pleading guilty, but also they don't want to go to trial. If they have to go to trial, it's going to be very tough for them. Hi, London Bridges. You're welcome to stay, actually. I don't give a fuck, okay? So, Odin, this is what they're saying. So, Odin, an Odin group, hijacked by white nationalists, and by this they should be saying white supremacists, not white nationalists. They're saying that, this group, it's been sort of invaded or sort of bastardized by white nationalists, and that there is a very strong group of, these Odinist white nationalists operating in Carroll County. I'm really surprised they didn't throw in, the words floor of fire, but there you go. They are alleging that a Purdue professor is possibly a figment of the investigation's imagination. And, they're very concerned that this line of inquiry was abandoned. This is going to be at the crux of what I'm going to get to, okay? Then they are mentioning, all about Rushville, and Elvis. Fields come into it. Fields, F. No one said that yet. I'm surprised. And talking about McClelland ignoring information that he was given, and they're trying to say that, the information was just so exculpatory. Is it really? Sometimes people ignore information because, it's not relevant. But there you go. They are stating that the FBI believed in the Odinism theory. Interesting then why they pursued Ron Logan. Were they perhaps going there to see if Ron Logan, was, this antler-wearing lead Odinist or something, or one of their lackeys that went out to prepare the scene? The things that they were searching for, well, we know what they were looking for. It seemed that they were looking specifically perhaps for burner phones and for devices that can hold images, etc. Guns, they were searching his vehicle. They're probably looking for blood, clothing, etc. They're talking about Holman and Click and their, sort of wranglings. They're complaining about that, and they're saying that, the prosecution are being very controlling of what they put forward, of what they supplied to the defense team, of what they considered important and not. I don't know what I've written here, but for their number 4, I've just put, why would they have to include Odinism in an affidavit if Richard Allen was perceived as guilty? Something very interesting is said, okay? So what the defense says is, they're talking about the Odinism. They briefly give a sentence about, this pagan Nordic belief system. And they say that, the perpetrator or the perpetrators, they're getting at, deliberately, carefully placed on each girl in a certain arrangement, mimicking certain runes. And there was a clean cut branch as one of the branches, one of the 7 branches. There were 7 branches used. Then they continue. Additionally, the blood of Libby German was used as paint to mark a tree with a rune that looks similar to the letter F. And they continue. With a simple Google search, these runes would be identifiable as one of the many calling cards of this religious cult. I mean, they've just turned the book around on themselves. That their whole 136-page document is trash. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but please point me to the page where they actually describe these Nordic symbols that are represented with Liberty German and Abby Williams. What I've done is I've redrawn them because we don't know which side, okay, Libby was on, right? They say a symbol that's kind of resembling an F. Okay, now, number one, there are two ways of runes being drawn as an F in these different Anglo-Saxon and Nordic alphabets, various old alphabets. And they don't decide which one it is. And number one, it could just be a smear. It could be Libby's handprint smearing blood. Her hands were covered in blood. Her body was smeared with blood. The F with the cross hatches going upward means possessions. The F going down, the cross hatches going down for signals. Okay, whatever that means. But the F on the tree is just, I know this is reversed. I'll show people this later. So that's for you, London. Yeah, you can read it. So it's more like a blotch like this. It could be a handprint. It could be anything. They're making it out like it was brush strokes. They don't even decide what this F symbol is supposed to mean. And guess what? So they are saying that the murderers have clearly made symbols meaningful to them in their pagan religion out of Libby, out of Abby, out of branches. And yet, where in their 136 pages do they ever describe to you those symbols and what they mean? They do not match. They do not match anything in those alphabets. The asterisk is the closest one. It's actually in a later alphabet that has been completely modernized. By that I mean in the 5th century. And it's more like this one here without the rest of the cross branches coming down to create what they call an asterisk. And that would mean protection, okay? But that's not how the branches were on Abby or Libby. They actually continued over, making a completely nonsensical sign that has nothing to do with Odinism, the Anglo-Saxonism, any old alphabet whatsoever. And neither do the branches on Libby, no matter how you tried to turn them upside down, because, hey, people are talking about how the girls were placed in a way that is reverse symbols, okay? Now, they more closely match things on tarot cards, for example. So how is that Odinism? Defense? And even upside down, they don't mean anything. There is nothing, absolutely zero, that matches, and the defense know it because they don't even try to explain it. They just say a mere Google search will show you what it is. Huh, really? Do they explain said Google search? Do they tell us of their amazing results? No, because they can't, because they're full of shit. So this Purdue University professor, we don't know who it was, we don't know who they asked. We all know that this investigation has been abhorrently poorly managed, and we know that Doug Carter, he of the theatrics and the ridiculous contradicting speech, he should have his head roll for the investigation, the poor management, or whomever is ultimately. I mean, Doug Carter is a figurehead. He's a politician. So maybe, Riley, whoever at the top, the state chief of this investigation should lose their job. They had to move premises. They're saying it was for security. Was it because they lost all their records because they didn't pay the rent on their premises? That's what some people say. So maybe they just can't bring up these records because they weren't computerized and they're in notebooks. They should have been computerized and centralized, and they weren't, and so now they don't know. Who knows? But if a Purdue University professor who is learned in Nordic pagan symbolism and alphabet and the three main ancient alphabets that are still existing in rune language today, if he can't recognize this, maybe there's something to that. Maybe because it's staged. Maybe because, hello, my beautiful Kit Kat. How are you, darling? I haven't been on your channel for ages. Of course, I'm seeing all your posts and everything, and the way that you're following up cases for all these poor women who are missing, and then just the timing's never right for me to actually watch you. But how are you? So I redrew my sketches, okay? So just remember that this is reversed. Remember that this is Libby's left. So what do we have with Libby, okay? So we do have a cut throat, and that is how both girls were murdered. Libby's blood was under the base of another tree, not this tree, another tree. Abby's blood, well, they don't know. And my theory is that I think, and I've always thought this, and now I think it more, I think she was attacked like that in the river, in Deer Creek, we should say. It's not a river, and that gives the wrong impression. It's a river that it runs into, the Wabash River, but this is Deer Creek, perfectly crossable at that time of year. And I've always thought Abby was attacked in the creek, and I thought this would make a stronger girl like Libby maybe stay. I don't know. And I think that might explain the lack of blood up at the scene where they were left, and searchers at night wouldn't be able to see blood in the water. And even though it might be 6-7 pints of blood, that's going to wash away in Deer Creek because it still did have a reasonable flow to it. This is a tree. Libby's left arm is up, her hands touching the tree. Her hands, both right and left, are covered in blood. She's naked, and she has damage and blood all over her body. Whether she was touching this with her own bloodied hands or not, I don't know. There are 4 branches on Libby. One large branch, and it's extending a few feet above her head, so probably going past this tree. And I've drawn this tree quite large, but the trees in the area were really small. And the branch extends down further. London just wanted to tell me, Kit, that all I do is just talk, and that I'm just basically a pretty crappy person. So down here, down beyond her feet and beyond the tree, and it's laying over her left shoulder. And then we're described a V of branches. So beginning at her join in her legs and coming up over one shoulder, coming up over another shoulder. And it's also described that this branch crosses across the cut in her neck and that all branches are connected. So if this V was narrower, maybe coming up closer to her head, this branch might actually be quite short. But I've drawn it because I felt like I was hearing that it was up over her shoulders, this V, and so that branch would be reasonably long as well. And it might be holding down these branches, just keeping them in place on her body. Now, as I said, Libby's blood wasn't found at this tree, but at the base of another tree, and a reasonable amount enough to allow law enforcement investigators to presume that it's quite possible that that is where Libby actually lost her life, where this wound was done, okay? People don't like to admit that these girls, I mean, because look, it is possible, right? It's possible that someone would, I don't appreciate it, London, okay? Because you try coming on a live and listening to fuckwits like yourself, okay? I just, you know, you weren't, and you're just being a rude bitch, whomever you are. Look at your stupid avatar, okay? Sorry, Kit, if that's your friend, but they're no friend of mine. So, of course, it's possible that, you know, people say, look, they were abducted from the site and actually taken away, murdered, and then brought back. It was a blood ritual. But what about if Abby was killed in Deer Creek? And what if that's why there's no blood, but there is Libby's blood? And what if that's why Libby doesn't have, Libby has blood on her hands from holding up to her throat and moving around, and Abby was killed in the water and carried up, and so she's clean, and then there's no more blood. Abby does actually have blood at her neck, and that's all. So the F, what people call the F, but it may not be a symbol F, could be a handprint, is on another tree yet again. Maybe a tree in between where Libby might have been cut and where she was laid. Who knows? But it's Libby's blood. And that's on your third tree. A lot of people are getting that wrong. Like you'll have, you know, Rick Snay saying that the F was on this tree and that sort of thing. And it's not Clue. Yeah, look, I'm just describing the Delphi murders scene, and I'm showing the symbolism because it's staged symbolism, or it's just merely an attempt to start covering the bodies and then somebody was interrupted. Because people are talking, Kit, in the Delphi murders about the symbolism of these branches, how the girls were laid out, and yet these symbols are not Odinistic symbols. They're just simply not. So how is it an Odinistic ritual? People have to be quite bendy with their imaginations. And you can fuck off, London. You're just not welcome, okay? Because you're not a pleasant person to interact with, because this is a difficult thing to do, and I don't put up with crap because it's hard enough as it is. I'm not very good at this, and I'm not perfect at it. It's very hard, but I'm just getting my point across, as is my right, okay? I'm not here to do a really if you don't like listening to people talk, why are you on a live where people talk? You're just a dick. So this whole Frank motion kit that Richard Allen's defense has put out, and the gist of it being, the crux of it being that, look, this wasn't Rick Allen, he's not an Odinist, and this was performed by Odinists. I'm going to have an iced coffee, excuse me. I just noticed, look how matchy my straw is to my top. That's kind of cute. And where are the people having these experts on their shows? And where are these people having having experts about this and showing what the symbols mean? They're just not, right? So they're saying that Brad Holder, you know, he showed the scene. He didn't mimic the scene. Brad Holder, Kit, is someone that, he's quite a creepy dude. His son, Logan Holder, was said to have been dating Abby, and Abby was 13, and Logan Holder, I think, was 16 or 17 at the time. And, you know, that shouldn't settle very well, but Brad Holder doesn't seem to have a problem with his son trying to cozy up to a much younger girl who does not need, you know, the urgent attentions of a horny teenage boy, right? So Brad sort of mimicked what he thought the scene might be, but he didn't replicate these symbols, and he showed, you know, the girls both clothed, and yeah, so it's pretty poor from the defense team. I think they're trying to hide this in 136 pages, but in their beginning pages, certainly within the first 55 pages, and to the end, they don't provide any proof. So now again, this is sort of reversed, because remember, this is Abby's right leg, and it's bent and it's under her left. Figure looks a bit sort of weird because I've drawn a slimmer girl, but I've put her into Abby's larger clothing, and actually it's not even clear, I don't think, whether or not Abby's own clothes were underneath. But I wonder if, hey Francesca, I wonder if they were, or if those were the clothes, you know, they must have been the clothes found in the creek. And again, that just makes me think of Abby being killed in the creek, and that's where her blood is. So Abby, apparently they're trying to say that the sticks that were tangled up in her hair were there to resemble antlers, you know, somehow making her a trophy or something. And where Libby had 4 branches, this Abby had 3 branches, 1 right down the middle and 2 across, creating an asterisk. We don't know where they cross, whether it was on her throat or not, and the only blood on Abby visible in crime scene photos is at her throat. So she was clean. Her feet were clean. Her hands were clean. To me, she wasn't scrambling up the bank, scrambling to get away. I think she was murdered in the water and carried up. That's just what I think. What have I written on these? So I've just written, you know, they were found late AM, 14th of February, 22 hours after they were reported missing. Libby had 4 branches placed on her. She was naked and on her back. Her left arm was up above her head, touching the tree that was at her head. The large branch was over her left shoulder. It's extending several feet above and below her head and her feet. There wasn't any blood spilled or sprayed around where she was laying, but it was, remember this is reversed for you guys, okay, so I'm going to film these later and just put them up for people that just, I shouldn't say need a visual because it is macabre, but it helps people. And the tree branch going across her was partially over the cut on her neck, and her blood was in significant quantity under another tree, okay? And then with Libby, I've written, you know, the phone. So people speculated about the phone. I wondered if it was dropped in Deer Creek or just discarded or thrown. Hey, JK. Hey, Connor. Hello, everyone. So, yeah, we were wondering, right? But under Abby's lower left back was a shoe, one of Libby's shoes, I think, and under that shoe was Libby's phone. And so it hasn't been taken, so a perpetrator would be afraid to take that, wouldn't they? Because they'd be thinking, oh, sorry, I'm not in a very good position here to be sitting or anything. They'd be thinking, I don't want to take the phone. What if I can be traced if I've got it? You know, maybe they could have taken the battery and the SIM card off, but they could have had a sensible amount of paranoia considering what they'd just done. But there was so much speculation about that. Of course, there are going to be people like Eye of the Ducky who are going to say, no, they put it there to make sure it was found and that it was maybe kept dry and safe, maybe, you know, in the shoe, but it was under the shoe. And, you know, this faction, they belong to the true village of the damned. Hi, Sticky Wicket. So nice to see you guys here. Thank you for turning up. God knows what time it is where you are. It's probably coming on to 1:30 here. Sorry, this has been really bad, but I just wanted to get this point across about something glaringly omitted by the defense, okay? And for people that are rolling in now, Connor, Fran, Sticky Wicket, Johnny, Cheapskate, Ezekiel, Eddie. My point is that they write in the Frank motion deliberately they say it's Odinism. It is this Nordic pagan cult that has been sort of taken over or sort of bastardized by the local white nationalists, by which I'm sure they should be saying supremacists. That's what they really mean. They say they deliberately, carefully placed on each girl in a certain arrangement, mimicking certain runes. Placed each girl in a certain arrangement, mimicking certain runes. Some of the, one branch was clean cut. Additionally, the blood of Libby German was used as paint to mark a tree with a rune that looks similar to the letter F. Then they say, with a simple Google search, these runes would be identifiable as one of the many calling cards of this pagan religious cult. Where do they go on to explain what these symbols are? As I have just been saying, these are not symbols of the Nordic pagan cult, Odinism, or anything similar to anything. The most similar one is the one for protection, which isn't an asterisk with a longer extended tail. It's this sign, like an upside down peace thingy, okay? Nothing else, upside down, backwards, sideways, is anything to do with Anglo-Saxon alphabet, Nordic, paganism, Viking, runes. It's just simply not. And this one can, in Rhesus alphabet, in the Here, this is serpent. But that's not exactly how it was either. We don't know. Now, if they are trying to put Nordic, put symbolism to stage this towards blaming, let's just say if someone was staging it, they might get quite muddled. Well, that would be a muddle, wouldn't it? If they have actually accidentally, if they've put this one for serpent and then they've tried to make something else, but one's Nordic, one is, the more modern and thoroughly changed Anglo-Saxon alphabet. I mean, it just points more to staged to deceive than anything else. Okay. Gosh, now there is so much we can talk about, but don't you find that absolutely hilarious? They don't choose which of the F's they think it is. The F with the upward little branches meaning possessions, or the little downwards branches meaning signals. That they don't specify, and they just tell you to go and make a little Google search and you'll find it. They don't give their findings. I mean, they're very slick. This was very sly. They would have been stupid to try and say what they are. They think they don't have to. If they get their way and they don't go to court, well, phew. If they do go to court, they're going to have to describe it. They're going to have to explain it. And they're not going to be able to, because it doesn't mean anything, because it's staged. Now, we don't know if the girls are like that or if the girls are like that. But their feet were closer, and and the heads were a few feet away from each other. So yeah, 12 autopsy photos, not a lot of visible blood. And it's sort of blotchy. It could be a handprint where just some fingers have leaned up against a palm and a couple of fingers have leaned up against a tree. The killer with Libby's blood on them. What's so shocking, we all feel the same, is that piece of tree wasn't taken out. They went back later to try and get these branches, but they didn't think to take them at the time, so that maybe they could forensically examine them, so that they could look at the cut mark and determine when the cut was made, because one of the 3 branches on Abby had a cut made with some sort of tool. It's crazy, because people really believe a lot of things that later turn out to be bollocks, okay? And an example is Chadwell. Chadwell, who had a tattoo of a woman on his arm. It was actually probably his mother or something. He had that tattoo done in 2016, but like wildfire through the true crime arena, everybody was convinced, a certain faction, everyone was convinced that that tattoo was Libby, that he had that put on him after he killed them, And you wouldn't be able to convince people otherwise, right? Sticky Wicket says, I think the defense are desperate, flinging at hoping something sticks. Yeah. Cheapskate Gaming says, so do you think the bodies were posed? No, I think the bodies were staged. If you were an Odinite, wouldn't you be mighty pissed if somebody tried to frame your religious group? Yeah, that might make you pretty angry. And a lot of Odinites in the area of Indiana, they're returned veterans. They might be people that have spent some time in jail, and they might now be working for the jail system. Do I believe that they're wearing Odinite patches? I don't know. Where's the proof of that? These things aren't allowed in present on guards' uniforms. Whether or not, they're flashing things at Ellen just to freak him out, who knows? But the guy could be psychotic and having paranoid delusions and hallucinations because he's very unwell mentally. We know this. And who knows what's real and what's not coming from Richard Allen. But miraculously, for the prosecution, they suddenly stopped at one point wearing these things. But think about it, maybe they've got a really good reason. They've had wind of people trying to push this into the realm of a ritualistic sacrifice. And if they think, maybe they really believe that Richard Allen is the murderer, they've got the right guy there being held before his trial, and they realize that he was trying to blame factions of people that just want to go about their own business. I don't know. Ezekiel, there's only one group of people historically known for, number one, sacrifice, and number two, deception. I think I have a good idea who did this. Sacrifice and deception. I mean, could think of lots of groups for that, but the first one I think of would be, I'm not just talking about Luciferians or anything, or the Church of Satan, but Satanists that like to follow the Esbat, the beast, the Esbat calendar, and yeah, I don't know. Possibly, I think that very esoterically, I think it's possible that, energies align and conduct people in various ways and conduct them to serendipitous moments that work out well. These moments where you might be in the right place at the right time to save a drowning dog or something else that's suffering. And I think they also conduct, in a way, maybe darker forces within people, so that, when they do commit atrocious crimes, they do happen at certain times of year. I don't know. Johnny says the lack of blood at the scene and the girls not having much on them makes you think what really happened is where is all this blood? Look, I know, Johnny, I know lots of people believe, and you might be one of them, believe that there was, time and opportunity for the girls to be taken away from one on High Bridge, murdered somewhere, their blood drained, and then they were returned. I mean, this is all so risky, and there's a lot of logistics involved, and someone needing very tight control, but it's possible, okay, it's possible. But consider this, there was blood, and it was Libby German's blood, and it was in significant enough quantity under another tree at the scene to be possible to be, enough life force that drained out of her and she died there at this other tree, okay? And Libby had blood on her hands as if maybe she was still alive there and touching, and there's blood on the tree. Abby was clean of blood. Her hands and her feet were clean, Johnny. So if you imagine, what if she was maimed, maybe didn't quite die there, but was mortally wounded in Deer Creek and bled out in Deer Creek, and her clothes were removed in Deer Creek because she was wearing Libby's clothes, and her clothes were maybe found in the water, I think. I think there's Libby's missing her underpants and a sock. But no one would see that blood, Johnny, several pints of blood in Deer Creek. By the time they were searching, it's washed away, and it was dark and they wouldn't see, and she's clean. Her hands and feet were clean. So she And she was light. I mean, she was the same height as Libby, but she was very, very slim. So, I mean, she could have been 90 pounds. Okay, I can lift 90 pounds, and especially if you're a monster with adrenaline, you can carry. She wasn't scrambling up the bank, maybe. She was clean, so maybe she was carried. And so where was she carried from? It could have been the water. I know people say, well, because she was brought in on an ATV or something like that. Cheapskate Gaming says the triangle can be a symbol of water or fire. The way it was staged here looks like water. Now, remember, I'm so sorry. This is reversed, okay? So, this is Libby's left shoulder it was over. I guess so. Look, it could have been someone trying to make something meaningful. It could have been someone just trying to, they were just in such a altered state, right? That it had meaning that it means nothing, but, have you ever been in a trance or out of it, right? And if things have got meaning and it could have been like that. It could have just been trying to start piling branches on the girls and was disturbed and had to leave. Connor thinks, yeah, that's what he thinks. Abby bled out in the creek. I don't see why not. I know there's a lot of mystery here. I mean, this is why people like us follow this case for 6 years, because people can't get over that they weren't found at the scene the night of the 13th. But, by the time someone was coming down from that north side along the north side of the creek, coming down east, so before walking on the creek, before coming off the 501 to go over the bridge, just going down that track to the left. Remember, at the time there was the orange barrier there before the bridge. Turning left there, and there's a trail. But at night, it's so treacherous. You get to the ravine, and if you're really not someone, I mean, a lot of people that knew the area were looking, but if you didn't know, or if it was so dark it was dangerous, you might hit the ravine without realizing. You need to circumvent it by quite a way, heading up further to one side of the cemetery and then cutting around down, because there's a big ravine that cuts in and blocks off. So you can't just walk along the creek edge or along the ridge easily, down to the site. But that's how the crow would fly, because they were very close to the creek, 50 feet or something. Think about that, 50 feet, okay? You can carry a 90-pound girl 50 feet, even up a hill. It gets steeper again beyond the site. There's a little bit of a height, but it's actually steeper going up to that cemetery. And they were nestled down under one side of that, opposite where the ravine runs down quite steeply. So I'm not describing this very well, but it's perfectly reasonable. And even though the area itself is type of a clearing, and people like Marv might say, yeah, I find it hard to believe that they couldn't find them just there, but maybe they walked right over them. Remember Lily Cole? This young girl, 10-year-old girl, killed by her 14-year-old stepbrother or something, or cousin. I can't remember now. I've talked about it on here, though. She was 10 foot from a main footpath, from a main road, just off, 10 foot into the bushes. She wasn't found for something like 24 hours or 20 hours, What, did he come off the bridge first? Wait, did he come off the bridge first? So Ezekiel, what people think happened was Abby and Libby crossed them on High Bridge, so north, went over to the south side, and BG's come up behind them, and he's had a gun, and he's directed them down the hill. They've gone down the hill, they would have hit the private drive, and if they had run east, if they'd made a run for it along that private drive, trying to get to Abby's house, maybe they would have made it. But I think these young girls knew, well, her mum's not home. They're running to an empty house and they may not make it. And maybe Libby had in mind, my dad, we've got to run towards my dad. He was going to be there to pick them up. Remember, he came across Wilson Bridge at 3:11. But maybe they thought they could run out up that way and find people. Yeah. But, you know, it's harsh what people say. Oh, he could never do it. But I think, you know, not enough people have had a loaded gun or a gun pointed at them. And these are young girls, and I think it could control them. Maybe they went a little way along each way, one way or the other along the private drive, but then they've gone down the steep. Maybe they thought they could get away from him because he wouldn't follow them into the creek or something. No one knows. You can only speculate. A lot of people say they never crossed the creek and that they were picked up there, taken away to the shack or wherever and returned, okay? When you were saying that it was not Odinism, I thought I would try to cross-reference with a book containing a lot of magic symbolism. The cross is a bit weirder. There's lots of symbolism that you can say matches, okay, because, you know, people are saying that this is like the hanging man. People are going to come up with, you know, this is the reverse of the magician who has his right arm up, you know, so they're just saying they're reversed symbols and things, right? But because they're so mix, match, higgledy-piggledy, it feels like it's so staged. And that is the terminology that the FBI used. The FBI didn't say posed. They said moved and staged, not moved and posed in Ron Logan's search warrant. And also, the funny thing is, you know, they're probably trying to keep that they had a bullet out of the public arena. This was the one thing that they had that they needed to keep quiet, right? They always need to keep something quite secret in an investigation, okay, for obvious purposes. And maybe they were just unsure because they thought maybe it is an officer's bullet, but it was placed in between the girls, okay? I mean, that's, yeah. See. But they didn't expect the search warrant of Ron Logan's property not to be released. It wasn't actually sealed. We could have had this years ago, and indeed I think people were, but they just didn't realize the interest people would have or the significance. I don't know. Excuse me. Ezekiel says, yeah, a majority of people would freeze at gunpoint. Yeah, you'd have to be a pretty, you know, pretty cool customer, right? Do you think a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old girl are these cool customers that can, you know, excuse me, be so cool under pressure and, you know, think really clearly and sort of know how to outwit someone that is a murderous, sexually violent offender? Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, it is truly strange, but I feel like everything, the defense has done this to themselves. I feel like everything in their document is moot. Yeah. I mean, they also admit, the girls that saw a figure, a man, a person on Freedom Bridge. We don't know. We don't know if this is Alan. And Carter doesn't even say that that is Alan. And the PCA, as we know, doesn't even straight up say murderer. It just says led them to where they were murdered. And there's no cause of death, of course, but we know it was from, you know, the wounds on their throat. What was I writing here? So many notebooks of crap that I can't read because it's all just scrawlings. Something about the search warrant for Ron Logan. Doesn't appear to be to specifically mention looking for a specific gun. You know, Richard Allen's .40 caliber weapon. His Sig Sauer can actually take different types of ammo, right? But they wouldn't have wanted to specifically write this into Logan's warrant. I mean, they were able to find guns, look for guns. He'd told them he had guns, but again, they were probably assuming that this document was going to be out in the public arena quite early on, and so they've been very cautious. So it makes me think that, yeah, the bullet is legitimate, that, you know, it was something that was just found at the scene, should have been found earlier, but apparently Liggett found it 4 days later. I don't know. In the warrant, they were looking for things including clothing, forensic evidence, so that would mean, you know, blood, perhaps, hair, maybe, sorry, and things like that. Blood, seen and unseen, body fluids, seen and unseen, animal hair samples. Remember Tony Klein's dog being taken, and then that dog's died now. Electronic devices. Yeah. People will try to tell you that Ron Logan's phone calls late at night were GPS located to the crime scene where Abby and Libby found. I do not believe that at all. I think it was just him using his phone, and it's in the vicinity of, just like every other phone call. That's just how it's written in the search warrant. And people like Snay, who love to affirm to everybody so boldly. Look, I might be wrong, but I don't think so. I don't think his calls are triangulated. Do you know, I've talked about this all before, but if you imagine, you've got Ron Logan's house, and this is the county road, and this is the crossroad. It's the 525, 575, can't remember now. Over that way is Libby and Abby's home, the Paddy's home. Over this way is Anna's house. But you've got Ron Logan's house and property here, right? And the creek, you know. And where the girls were found. This is the radio tower. It's just there. It's just there at the corner. And it draws a perfect line. Perfect line. It's quite spooky. What's being said here? Cheapskate says, as in staged, to confuse. Yeah, staged means to cast guilt, cast suspicions somewhere else. So, you know, you stage a robbery so that you're hiding the fact that you murdered your spouse, but you want it to look like this horrible tragedy, you know, that occurred during the course of a totally unrelated crime, unrelated to the fact that you want your spouse dead, right? But people in those staged crimes often forget to do things like break into the house from the outside and they're not willing to sacrifice things in life that, things they don't want to do without. So insignificant things are stolen. Okay, so that, staged, as in to confuse, yes, as in, what does it, Cheapskate continues, as in there is no symbolism, it's there as a false lead, which case you're dealing with a serial killer who's done it before. It might not be a serial killer, but it is Robert Ives, Cheapskate, who called these signatures, isn't it? And the signature is a very specific thing as well. It doesn't have to pertain to a serial killer, but it would be something that you would look out for in other cases if you were trying to tie them together. Ezekiel says, excuse me, it's hay fever season here. That's where you and I disagree. I think the bullet was placed because I think the bullet was placed because there's no reason for that bullet to be where it was. Yeah. Again, it can be part of the staging because it's common knowledge, and it would have been to Alan common knowledge that policemen use that gun, the gun that he has, the Sig Sauer, that they use 40 caliber bullets, and that they cycle their bullets often. Policemen's bullets are cycled often, the cartridges, and he would know that a lot of people that are in law enforcement and things like that, maybe he's taking a punt that a law enforcement bullet is also a push towards a certain group of people. I don't know. But do you know what, Ezekiel? It could be a law enforcement bullet. It could be what's that person's name back? Don't even remember. London Bridges is back. She's falling down. Johnny says, sad they were so close to one of the houses. Right, so was it 1.6? Was it how far? Was it 1.5 miles? Was it 2K or something like that? And these are fit young girls. Imagine how quickly they could run there. 10 minutes, let's say, to be take, account of the terrain or whatever, right? But it is sad. It is sad. And they knew where Abby's house was. Of course, they knew that driveway led down to the 600 or whatever. And so, yes, what else was I having in here? Yeah, so I would like the defense to come up with the explanation of what these runes are. They don't actually say. They just tell people to do a Google search. Well, a Google search won't find them, and nor will a professor at a university, apparently, defense. So you're just pointing to staged. Now, they're saying that Alan says that he left at 1:30. A car matching his Ford Fiesta was seen at 2:10, 2:14, and 2:18 at CPS. But it's true that, look, the Freedom Bridge sighting was around 1:30. Did the girls get it wrong? Did they actually see Richard Allen and he was going the other way and he was going to his car? We don't know, okay? But now, this is the thing, right? And people are saying these interviews, they're putting words into Richard Allen's mouth that he never said these things, that he never saw these girls or didn't just, but in the affidavit, it says that in one of the October interviews, Richard Allen explains that he was on that bridge at this particular time, and he saw some of these girls and described one of the girls as, one of them saying hi, which she says, and it's quite remarkable though, isn't it? I can see how conspiracy theorists do think this is beat up. But he does say he sees these girls. And he does say so they say, that he does say that he saw, was it this one, Betsy, on the trail. Okay, Sarah is the other lady. This is, a real bone of contention, the muddy bloody sighting. It was just muddy. It could have been any muddy man, out hunting, just carousing around, who knows, right? None of these sightings might have been Richard Allen, but the prosecution is saying, well, he confirms it himself. So I'm laughing at Ezekiel. So in the affidavit stating, he says about this in these interviews, the affidavit has him seeing girls, seeing the woman, but not seeing Abby and Libby, has him saying he's on the bridge, has him saying that he's parking at CPS. This is a huge murder case. What do we know about other murder cases? What we know is that these cases are recorded. It used to be only audio. If you think back to with West Memphis 3, for example, okay, which of course can call into question Jesse Miss Kelly's confession interviews and things like that, right? The audio is very dodgy, but regardless, I think they done it. But what can we expect if this makes it to trial? We can expect to see these interviews. We can see the videos. We can see what Richard Allen says. We will see the bridge guy film from Libby's phone. We will hear the audio. Think about Letitia Stalk, okay, and her murdering her stepson Gannon, right? Look at all that came out there, all that you got to hear finally, okay? All the interviews, all the phone calls. These interviews are going to be recorded. If they aren't, I mean, how keystone can it all get? But, But we will see them. We will hear them. Yeah, so I think I have said what I wanted to. With regards to that bullet too, and it might not be Allen's, and it could be a plant, and sure, he could be being set up, it could be set up by officers, who knows, but what about a gun registry? He says he bought this gun 20 years ago. Was it registered? Did he update his details to register him as being the owner living there in the town of Delphi? Sure, they're probably, in Delphi alone, there will be thousands of guns, okay? But police work solves crimes, and, this is the thing. People think that the people, human beings working on this case, trying to solve it, trying to investigate it, trying to dot I's and cross T's, they think that these are all detectives. They're not. The troopers, officers, whatever, they're not. They've maybe not got any specific training. Now, they should have some common sense, not so common, and they should be able to follow procedure and be sensible, but there's so many things that weren't done. But you think, okay, who was responsible for, they have to follow up this bullet. Who's responsible for finding all the gun owners? I mean, okay, everybody. Anyone fitting Rich Guy's description? Did they ever knock on Richard Allen's door? No, they didn't. I've had people from Delphi tell me no one's knocked on their door and they would superficially fit the bill and should have been door knocked at least. Isn't this ridiculous? They just haven't done the plod work. And police work solves crimes. Going over the minutiae, building a foundation, keeping good records, making good notes, following leads, that's what solves it. That's what allows things to go to trial and be won, because the detail's there. The work was done. Wicket says, to your point, Alan's search history will be disclosed. Many skeletons, I presume. Yeah, I believe he was using a burner phone, Wicket, at the bridge because of, you'd have this IMEI number. I think it's different in the, I think he's using a burner phone. I mean, to have the police learned, first when he's first come forward, they should have gotten all his details, maybe asked him to hand over his clothes, put those into evidence bags to be checked. Every person that was at the trial should have been treated that way, okay? And he wasn't. They should have asked him all his devices. They I don't know, they could have said, okay, can you show us on your device you just at the bridge using your stock ticker? Oh, I can't show you on this phone. It doesn't exist. That record doesn't exist. Oh, what device were you using, Mr. Allen? Okay, it's different here. It's different here in Australia because it seems like in America you can just go in and buy a burner phone known anonymously. In Australia, you have to show ID. You have to show your passport, or, you have to show 100 points of identification, okay? This is against crime. Of course, people have their ways and people just steal phones to use for crime and all sorts of things, right? But yeah, he was using a burner phone. He might have been using Anthony shots. That could be a complete red herring, and that might be why Keegan Kline got 43 years for his crimes. Not that they aren't despicable crimes, but because law enforcement might have been just really miffed at him that they wasted so much of his time and made them look like fools. I don't know. Anthony shots might be involved, but Johnny, there is zero proof that I know what you're thinking of. You're thinking that Keegan Kline is saying that through Anthony Shott's account, he had arranged to meet the girls and that they never showed up. That's not fact. And even if it's true that, that account arranged to meet the girls, that day, the week before, 3 weeks ago, 2 days ahead, it's not fact. It's not proven. I'm not saying it might be true, right? It might be true, but it's very likely not. Yeah, it's very likely not. So I don't know. There's so much, isn't it? So frustrating because we have to keep saying wait and see. But that's true. We have to wait and see. And what's actually god awful is if there is merit to say things done in a way that can lawfully dismiss the case against Alan because things were done unlawfully. And again, this comes down to police work and being professional and not being a cowboy, so that when you are working on such an important case, I mean, every bit of protect and serve should be as important to professional police people. But, it needs to be taken a bit seriously, doesn't it? And if people are cutting corners, rushing, being shifty, just wanting to get to their end goal and things, and they're not thinking about the process of a court trial and being held to account and accountability, then it's devastating. That's devastating for the families of victims. Was it Ezekiel that was talking about posed versus staged? Have a look, Ezekiel, just do a quick Google, and this one will come up with a result, not like the defences. Just Google Nordic runes and you'll see this, but you actually don't. It should be demanded of them. Okay, tell us, which symbols are they? What do they mean? Where are they? It's someone, maybe just giving it a go, or it's just a complete fluke that it looks anything similar, or it wasn't that at all, and it's just someone trying to cover bodies and got disturbed and ran away. But look up, it's a thesis paper by a woman called Dr. I think her first name's Claire, but if you just put Dr. C. Ferguson and look up the defects of the situation, and that is her thesis paper. It's probably 10 years old, but that's actually quite modern for this sort of study. And the defects of the situation, and what she does is doesn't look good for the FBI, let's just say, because the FBI have a highly inflated view of their ability to profile and to pick out staging and to pick out motives for staging. They're quite appalling at it, but John Douglas and Burgess and everyone, oh look, I guess Burgess is all right, but they'll try and tell you otherwise, but that's all right. They've got a cult following. But she actually puts real research in and shows you the real statistics on a very large, reasonably large study. I mean, obviously it's limited because this type of violent crime and known staged crimes, there's a limited number, but she's looked at as many as possible and collaborated with some rather brilliant people who have done similar studies. And she will tell you all about staged crime, what they do and why, who does it to whom and why, the age of these girls and everything. It's very important. In actual fact, statistically, if this wasn't Rick Allen, well, I would have to bend more toward fellow teenagers committing this crime. Wicket says, I don't think KK left the house unless it involved cheese. Yeah, cheese and soda. And Jonestown, have I ever looked into? I mean, I know about it, but I haven't looked into it because, yeah. No. So, staged crimes and the victims being who they are. But the thing is, teenagers being victims of violent crime, if it's not a, sexual predator, it's often peers, people that they thought were their friends or what have you. And, but they're mainly caught. If you think of shadow man killers and, so many teen killers who kill and scream like fashions and things like that. I mean, these people are brought to justice generally very quickly. So, yeah. Do you mean cheapskate of Abby and Libby? Yes, I mean, they both had their throats slit, and we can assume that that's the method of their death, because Abby had no blood to speak of in her body and quite a terrible wound, and so did Libby. You know, they had to have scarves on their necks at their funeral, etc. I mean, did Brad Holder? Now I can't even remember. Did Logan Holder and Brad Holder, did they go to Abby's funeral? You know, people are making a big deal about, they're trying to say that he's deleted all his Facebook things that make him look guilty. Everything's still up, from what I understand. All his images, his paintings, his drawings, his posts from the time. I don't think anything's been deleted. Don't believe everything you hear on YouTube, even from me. Although, yeah. Another thing I just wanted to say again, because it just comes up time and time again. Is it possible a YouTuber could do this? You mean, could a YouTuber have committed this crime and make it look like something else? I'm not quite sure what you're saying, Johnny. I mean, anybody could be a YouTuber, right? And then go out and commit a crime. You're saying that you think someone's committed this crime so that they can have a channel about it or something? I don't think so, but I'm not quite sure if that's what you mean. Sorry. Another thing is that it really pisses me off because we're talking about 13 and 14-year-old girl, right? And excuse me, parched iced coffee. A lot of times, okay, so look, this whole Underground Railway road thing and missing people, you know, they're very much at the forefront of people's minds and conspiracy theories right now, but people misconstrue the figures, sometimes because of lack of education and sometimes because it serves them. And missing people, okay, so there is a small percentage that remain missing, that yes, have tried to disappear or they're dead. And the majority of the hundreds of thousands of people that are missing on any given day are found, but those figures aren't quoted. And people will tell you about, but what about all the milk carton children? There was 102 milk carton children in total, a collection of all the unsolved crimes at the time. It wasn't a new child every week. People forget this or don't know this or don't realize this, or, you know, and a lot of people are runaways, okay? Now, they are running away from something. Some of them might be running away because but yeah, because they are just misbehaving or they're being led astray by other peers, you know, and they're usually found very quickly, actually, within a few hours or within 24 hours, etc., and they're usually returned home. Another huge set of people that are missing, they are actually abducted by family members. So they're reported as missing and they're kept missing even though they're actually with a parent, and a parent has absconded with children and taken them interstate. They're not trafficked as such, okay? And the sad thing about teenage runaways and people that are thinking that there's this glut of just missing teenagers, where are they? Have they been shipped to the Middle East as sex slaves? No, but they might be running away because their stepfather is abusing them, or their stepmother is cruel, or they are being abused by an older brother, or they are being mentally abused, or they are being beaten, or they're being starved, or there is domestic violence in the home between the older guardians, the parents or whomever, right? So there's usually a reason, and it's actually often pretty sad when they return again, when they're made to go home, and they're sort of like, here you go, don't do it again, Johnny. You worried your parents. These poor kids, right? They're just trying to express something, like a barking animal. They're just trying to express something, and nobody's really listening. They're not able to communicate, but they're not missing. They're not trafficked, right? And quite often, though, parents, guardians will ring up and say, my child isn't here, and the police will go, okay, it's 6 p.m, so they left school and they're not home for dinner, so they don't do anything, though. Maybe they'll send someone around, but they're not going to place an Amber Alert. I mean, there's nothing to alert. They don't have a vehicle description or anything like that, but they're not going to be all resources out because a parent's phoned a police station, because that kid could be down at the skid. This is what the police think. They'll be down at the skate park. They're at a friend's house. They've run away. They're hanging out in the car park. They're at the movies. Whatever, and they just think no, and they have that attitude because mostly they do, and they have limited resources. But Delphi is constantly and heavily criticized for its response, but it was a brilliant response. And why? Because of the relationship between law enforcement and the Paddy family. They were friendly, I believe. They've got friends, the sheriff and everything. So it was actually a major response to be believed that no, these girls just aren't playing up. They're not just off with boys or doing this or that, only to slink home in the morning or when they're hungry or whatever, right? It was actually an unusually, exceptionally good response. But because there weren't helicopters out there, because dogs weren't brought out that night, and because, blood dogs, and because other tracker dogs were just called off because it was treacherous, this is suddenly part of the conspiracy to cover up this murder and to make this whole scene. And that is, Tobe, I believe, is truly down on himself about calling off the tracking dogs so early, and that is frustrating. But people were out there, and this is hundreds of people, and normally a 13-14-year-old girl, the family might be driving around for a few hours, they're calling friends, they're calling hospitals, they don't get a response like that. Sheriff's out at night searching in a dangerous area for these girls. They were looking for alive girls. Libby, Abby, they're listening for a response. They're not expecting they're going to be tripping over dead bodies. And that's unreasonable and unnatural to think so, even though, yes, parents and everything deep down, of course, you're going to be thinking the worst, but it's not what you initially assume. It's not what law enforcement assume, and there shouldn't be the expectation on them to have done any more than they did. It's just part of the whole mysterious, awful tragedy of Abby and Libby. It's part of their story. People really fucking tried, and gave it, a huge effort, activated by the family, a family just like any other family who might have been concerned because it's the first time their kids have done something like this. But usually those families are kind of on their own and aren't getting that kind of help, not immediately. We hear horror stories all the time about how families weren't listened to, saying that this is just so out of character. You know, come on, we're true crimers, we know it. And they thought they were just looking for girls who were maybe hiding or not even in that area anymore, that had maybe been out of that area from the afternoon, okay? And darkly, it would have been in the back of some people's minds, yeah, are they not there because they've been abducted? Has something terrible happened? But that's not what you're trying to race towards, or the conclusion you're trying to jump toward, right? And, 99% of the time, that would be the prudent thing, or the thing that turns out to be right, no matter what the reasons for the children being missing in the first place, or hiding out, or gone, or runaways, okay? So, yeah. But, God, that does gross me out about if it's true that Logan Holder was Abby's boyfriend. What's defective about him? I mean, his father is very intense, and was he supporting it? He knew about it. Did he facilitate them getting together at times? Was he not talking to his son about the appropriateness of a 17-year-old boy hanging around with a 13-year-old girl? You think of Summer Wells, and you think of her father, Don Wells. So Summer Wells, who went missing from the Beach Creek area, Hawkins County, Tennessee. And Don Wells, we know, is a degenerate. And so is his son. His criminal record attests, because his son, and now Don Wells Jr., okay, so he went to prison for sex crimes because, for stat rape, because he was 18, 19, and he was sleeping with a 14-year-old girl. And Don Wells, because it's his fashion to downplay sort of things, and just to try and create some fantasy world where nothing's as bad as it seems, and everybody's complicit and is equally involved in all these very inappropriate and illegal things. He's trying to tell the story that the girl, I think she was 15 and his son was 17 or something, and trying to make out like, hey, maybe if the girl's quite mature and the son's, boys mature later, that 15 and 17 is not so bad. But it was 19 and 14 or something like that. A grown man, even though an unformed man, he's not 25 yet, sort of thing, but with a child, with someone who's ostensibly a child. And 16 and 13 is kind of like that. No, he wasn't 17, Johnny. No. Oh, sorry. No, Logan Holder, he was 17. Yes, Don Wells Jr. was nearly 20 years old. Yes, Logan Holder. And, if Anna knew about that, God, wouldn't you want to shut that down? But people say that she didn't. But one of my theories as to why Brad Holder was able to make some of the sketches that he did. Now, he didn't draw them out as the girls were, right? He didn't draw this. He drew them both fully closed, totally different scenarios, symbols, whatever, right? Probably real Odinistic symbols and not fake ones. But if maybe there was a connection there, well, I mean, there is a connection there. So Anna being Abby's mom, and Anna being related to Erskine, who put out the texts saying about how they were found and the symbols and the sticks and the, he described the scene, but he couldn't quite describe the symbols. Holder couldn't either, but maybe he was privy to these texts. This is how we got this out, this drawing out so quickly as other people were hearing about it too and wondering, Yeah, it's just, it is because of all these layers and everything that it does make it very intriguing. But, this is kind of the nature of small towns and small communities, isn't it? You are going to find a lot of connections, families that have been there generations, and they are going to have connections. And some of them, you think they know each other well, they probably wouldn't really know each other at all. And looking in, you think it's impossible that they're not cronies, but they're just not. And, there's a difference between circumstances and circumstantial evidence. I mean, there's lots of circumstances surrounding every single crime, but it's how you weight things with meaning that is important, and we've gone down so many roads with this, putting meaning on so many things, right? Doesn't help with this talk of tentacles and the like, does he? Maybe it's all those dead-end roads, just the same as what we're running down, that has just confused the police and run them ragged. They've just had so many avenues to pursue. We've all been pursuing them. Why wouldn't they be as well? They're obliged to. Maybe that's just what he means. Maybe he just meant, well, there's been an awful lot to look into, because, they missed that important piece right at the start, if it's true. Richard Allen talking to Doolin. So they've kind of created the mess themselves, also by not just doing due diligence. It's pretty pathetic. And I think there's just a lot of jostling amongst different authority groups and a lot of political shit. And yeah, sure, a lot of corruption and a lot of, mismanagement, let's just say, on a county and state level. And yeah. So they have not been concentrating at the job at hand. I don't know. A lot of people are linking flora fire. So, that with this, and because of this supposed white supremacist situation here, well, that's, they'll be saying that this is some sort of retribution or something, or some sort of threat about exposing the flora fire murderer, the arsonist perhaps. But oh God, I mean, who knows? I just wish, isn't it a relief when things are wrapped up, right? Isn't it a relief, for example, when Letitia Stout, the trial came, it's done, she's away for life. You kind of don't have all this worry and concern about the coulda, woulda, and all the what ifs and everything anymore, right? And I mean, we've only got a partial closure with Tylee and JJ and Charles and Tammy's murders, because Laurie Vallow and Chad Daybell, there's still trials coming up for them still, even though Laurie Vallow's been on trial for Charles, JJ and Tylee, her husband, 2 children. And accomplice to the murder of, conspirator to the murder of Tammy. But but now she's got to go to Arizona for, so Tylee, JJ, and Tammy, sorry. And now there's still the trial to get through for against her for the death of Charles Vallow. And Chad has to go to trial as well because, it was decided that the trial would be separated for them, that they wouldn't stand together and maybe have separate juries, but they'll actually have their own trial. Anyway, why am I talking about that? Goblin problems. Who would want to eradicate goblins? Why are goblins a problem? Zapine, you sound like a bit of a downer. Why are goblins a problem? No, I don't know. I don't know why anyone would want to be down on goblins. Up with goblins. Maybe there should be a referendum to give goblins, their own autonomy and power. Maybe they should actually have a seat in Congress. Yeah, Senator Goblin, Senator Goblin, and they can maybe wear little, little Nordic things, and they can create, just have their own language officially recognized, and maybe goblins should be taught in schools. Yeah. Probably should be taught in schools. Critical thinking should be taught in schools. I don't even know if it would be taught. Do you know what? He kind of does. And Richard Allen, okay, short of stature, but men should not be bullied or dismissed for short stature, just as women should not be bullied or dismissed for being tall or broad or whatever. But I think Richard Allen, if he styled himself a particular way, lived a lifestyle, I don't know, he probably could have been pretty normal looking, reasonably attractive. Poor Kathy Allen, because she clearly was in love with him, even though I've made my thoughts on that known. They do. But don't let people get hold of this too far, because they'll be putting them in their own towns, though. No, proudly right wing here, proudly conservative, and there's a limit. You can't please all people all of the time, and that includes goblins. Goblins' culture should be respected, but they need to integrate. Goblin down. What were we just saying? I mean, this has to be really disturbing for Anna Williams, Becky Paddy, Mike Paddy, Kelsey, can't remember her married name, etc. Because the family has staunchly been trying to support law enforcement in bringing to justice the murderer of Abby and Libby. And over this long period of time, they have been desperately trying to follow leads as well. And now, with all this shit, it must haunt Becky Paddy that she has brought to attention a lot of this Odinism, or mentioned people and then said, oh, and yeah, they're an Odinist. There's just lots of stuff whirling about, right? Because there's, Brad Holder falling out with an Odinistic friend, having a fight over something in February 2017. But just maybe it was because he accused the guy of the murders, I don't know. It's very disturbing, Fran? Every time things are really big and like this, family has to hear about it, and they've got YouTubers ringing them up and asking what they think about it, and it must be so distressing because, now look, I've made the decision to draw out those things. Some people don't want to read, the crime scene details that have been kept under wraps until the defense, think about this, okay? The defense are just trying to muddy these waters. They want a defense's job is reasonable doubt, okay? The onus is on the prosecutor to overcome that. The defense just needs to introduce reasonable doubt, and they haven't explained the runes that is at the heart of this theory that they're trying to put forward. And also, they are the ones, not the prosecution. The prosecution has tried to release as little as possible, and that's normal for a prosecution, right? But it's the defense that has just released this quite inflammatory, quite distressing to some if they've never heard of it. A lot of us have heard a lot of detail that has been sort of unconfirmed, but we've known about it. This is quite distressing, and that's the defense that has done that. It's, they are being cutthroat, so to speak, sly, and underhanded in a way. I mean, I just think that is a glaring omission. And no one's saying, well, what is it then? What are these symbols? They're getting away with it. People have just hook, line, and sinker swallowed it without going, so look at your language. Deliberately, carefully placed on each girl in a certain arrangement, mimicking certain runes. Which runes? Mimicking which runes? You say certain runes, so particular runes in particular. Which fucking ones? They never go on to say. Additionally, used as paint to mark a tree with a rune, No, there's markings on a tree in Libby's blood that resembles our alphabet F. That's it. But they say mark a tree with a rune that looks similar to the letter F. Similar how? Well, it's similar because it's just an unformed mark. This is going reverse this, okay, kiddos. It's not this firm F. It could be a palm print. It could be daubed on. It could be someone trying to communicate something. There is an Elvis Fields that supposedly, what's the word? Losing my mind. Confessed to his sister, said that he was involved in something horrible at a bridge with two girls. He's the one that said, officers, if my spit is on the body, can I explain it away? Because I don't want it to make it seem like I'm guilty. It's not an F, but... And they carry on with a simple Google search. These runes would be identifiable as one of the many calling cards of this pagan religious cult. Is it a cult? Well, a lot of religions can be cults. I believe Mormon church is a cult. Sorry, Mormons, LDS, but your church is a cult. And a lot of people, though, are pagan. They consider it their religion. It is a people's right to practice and believe their religion of their choice, okay? And if you think that the only people with the right to, follow rituals, sacraments and things are, Roman Catholics and groups like that, I mean, that's not really fair, is it? But, that's what they're saying. But the F and these other two symbols, they are never, now please, this is why I'd like someone to tell me right, but I haven't found it. If the defense, tell us what this F is, or tell us what these symbols are, please let me know, because they're not described, they are not explained by the defense. Don't you think that is an important part of their defense theory? They are blaming Odinus. They're saying quite clearly, these are symbols. And this means that it was done by an Odinus group, and Rick Allen has he's got no ties. No ties to any pagan group, no. I mean, I don't think he's got close friends, really. I know he had a lot of mates that he knew that he'd play pool with, snooker with, but I think Kathy was his best friend. They went trekking. They enjoyed holidays together, and any activity Ricky was doing, she was there. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I don't think he's got cronies. Who would he confide in? Now, yes, maybe someone he met on the internet, and one of you wonderful people mentioned before, we will find out who's connected with or what he's been searching, right? Ezekiel said, watch my mouth, young lady, I must be swearing again. That's my goblin, because I identify as 25% goblin. So, yeah. They should be called to account for that. They are, what they've done, so people are saying that look, what this is it's, I don't want to say it's just cherry picked and then it's just, but it is. It's things that they've drawn in, everything that points to what they want to create reasonable doubt around. I mean, let's face it, next week they could create another Frank Motion document for release, and thanks, thanks, friend. You're inclusive, and you could actually, I mean, we all know, anyone that knows this case, we could create a really resoundingly good theory, right? We've got lots of players, there are lots of actors, as people like to say. That was probably McClelland just covering his prosecutorial bases, right? To say, to mention other actors in case that's how it occurs. I mean, it's just so... Thank you guys for hanging out. I know this had a very shaky start. I wish I could edit things like that, but I knew I wanted to talk for longer than 20 minutes. I'm going to be trying to just upload 20-minute videos again, and they are more succinct, more easy to listen to probably. And my lives are shocking, as you know, but because I've got a very unprofessional setup and everything, it's quite tricky. And it's very hard to get underway. And, a lot of people like to come in and they really want to wrong foot you and put you off and needle you and troll you and everything. And they will do that every single time without fail. But yeah, Fran, so I value your opinion. Do you see my point about this whole angle that they're going for here? They've really particularly chosen Odinism, ritualistic sacrifice, and the symbols being there. Although why would anyone want to show so clearly this was me, right? I'm an Odinist. here I am with my cronies. We've killed the skills, and we'll leave these symbols for you to show that we've done it. But, you know, do you think that they should have to show in their document, well, what these runes are? I should sing. You can play. We'll put a band together, JK. We'll get some singers. I'll try to play the ukulele really badly. And, yeah, we'll have a band. Call the Goblins or something. You think the defense is stretching? Yeah. Do you think, I mean, you know, from a legal standpoint, right, with regards to how the investigation was handled, do you think it's mismanaged to the point where Rick Allen could get discharged, you know, charges dropped because they've gone around things the wrong way with regards to the search warrant? I think that's really what this would be all about. I don't know why they just couldn't fucking stick to that, mind my language, but they've got nothing. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it seems super desperate. Because they're probably at quite the loss. I don't know, it just seems so desperate. It just seems unprofessional, right? There's no reason to bring this up before trial unless they just want to taint the jury pool. They know that this is a major case. They know the coverage this is getting. Why can't they just be more professional? It's just like, you know how Barry Morphew's, you know, stupid Linda Stanley, and, you know, Barry Morphew's Pride and Prejudice novel, Affidavit, right? When really, if you've got the goods, an opening page with the right names, a page of information, and then a page of signatures is all you need. 3 or 4 pages is done. Doesn't that reek of this? Because if they just had one hard legal fact that said that search warrant was illegal, it was unjust, if it just means that that's got to be thrown out, therefore you need to come again with some information about Rick Allen, otherwise, you know, he shouldn't be in jail and the charges need to be dropped, etc. Can you see me now, guys? Because it just dropped out. I might need to go. I think my Wi-Fi's going a bit iffy. You know, so wouldn't you believe them more in their belief of Richard Allen's innocence? Remember once one of his lawyers said, oh, I've spoken to him, I think he's innocent, he's a lovely man, this poor family. They have never repeated that ever again. And, you know, don't you think that would just be quite to the point? Your Honour, pertaining to search warrant, by this gate, it is, this is where they have broken the law. They have not, you know, Richard Allen as a, you know, civilian, blah, 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 that would be that, and they would just file that, and the judge would read it and go, oh yes, this, you're correct. But they haven't done it. And it was the same with Barry Morphew's, that ridiculous affidavit. Right, so, and these things are put out because they're put out for you, for me, for you, for Indiana, okay? And it's to, you know, people say, oh, it's, they scoff at that. They scoff that it's to taint the jury pool and everything, but it's to create reasonable doubt. They could have, if the search warrant was unjust legally, they could have had it thrown out like that in months ago, not yonks, months, right? but they haven't. Yeah. But short, like Morphew, I guess, short on physical evidence, although the bullet, there's some people, some legal minds, I guess you could say, that have said that it doesn't really matter about the bullet, even without the bullet. Yeah. What else? Maybe. Quickly, sorry. Watching people flick through a notebook is like watching paint dry. Yeah. But that's what I think. That's what I think. I think that it's so ridiculous because the so-called symbolism, and apparently it's easy to find, and what they're saying about the Purdue unit, Purdue, who's from there, do you know? Purdue or Purdue? That's funny because didn't Barry Morphew go to Purdue? He did, didn't he? Yeah, he played baseball for Purdue University. This is my Morphew case antlers. I have little things representing every case that I cover. So them bringing up that, so what kind of if they can't find this professor, what they then should have said was, they're saying that they had a professor that dismissed that these are even anything like Nordic runes, but they don't know his name. They didn't then follow it up to legitimize their own claims, saying, so we have done the work. We have approached Professor Who of, Washington State University, who has studied these 3 Nordic languages for 25 years. He's well known in his field. He's a published, peer-reviewed author. And he tells us they mean this, this, and this. Do they do that? No. I'm not married, Ezekiel, but a 6'7" bodybuilder, oh my God, that would be terrifying. That would be scary. I'm only 5'4". Yeah. So I think I should make a short about that, eh? Yeah. So let's do that. So I'll do that. So, the fact that they don't name them, they don't find a university professor, and they don't even give any references for these Google searches that they did to find them. They just, see, this is my theory. They are playing to us, to the true crime arena. They are playing up to people like little tiny weeny eeny incy bitsy Joe Lewis and all of the True Village of the Damned, who suck their stuff up. They live for it. They are mainlining this crap, and they know that job done. All they need to do is play on all the shit that the True Crime Arena, that's not us, we're the community, the True Crime Arena do, and they know that they're going to do the rest. They will now be loudspeakering this out everywhere, and they know that these days it's even going to get on mainstream media because we've got Bam Bam Banfield and even now Barbara McDonald, putrefying Court TV's latrine. God, I'm so disappointed in Vinny because Court TV used to be, you could rely on them and you could go on and listen to 20 minutes of hard news and really good reportage relating to the legal side of ongoing criminal investigations or trials. And now, it's just MSM and everything, everyone is degraded by social media because they want a piece of it. They need it to survive, and so they take on the worst traits and they can amplify it because, they have that imaginary gravatar, and they have an audience that's already there. They've already got hundreds of thousands of viewers, and people believe them still to be journalists following the journalistic code of ethics, which they're not, and they don't. So this is what the defense is using. That's my theory. I think I commented about that, or I put a little community post about that. They're just using the words and the emotions and the warped thought processes of the community, using it against you, using it against justice. You all think you're out there fighting for justice, and you are being used to destroy it. Why let a guilty man get away? And I know you haven't. Humanimal, I thought this Odin group, says Johnny, was peaceful people and worship trees and wilderness. Look, they're just people that are out there yelling in a forest, wearing costumes, and I think it's a little too much like manifestation, and things on that side of the witchy fence, so to speak. I mean, it's a bit new agey, but this is old agey, new agey, isn't it? Yes, no, they don't. They're not human sacrifices, okay? I think clearly it's staged, and clearly it's a staged crime scene, and I think the FBI and I think all law enforcement have known this from the start. But maybe they feel like they've had to pursue these avenues. I don't know. Anyway. Yeah. All right. Well, goblins unite, and yeah, go forth and spread truth. Fight the good fight in comment sections. I mean, don't get to be as unpopular as me, because I'll go in and say, well, in actual fact, it was in this year by this person, and what you're saying is complete bollocks. Thank you for being here, Fran, Connor, everybody, Johnny, everyone. If I don't say you, don't worry. Sticky, Alyssa, Adam, everybody, anyone who's popped in, even the trolls, because trolls are probably distant cousins to goblins. Goblins might have about 2% troll DNA in, if you're from a certain part of the world, so Europe, just as Homo sapien from certain parts of the world will have Neanderthal, different parts of the world will have Denisovan from different parts of the world, all these little trace elements of our great ancestors. So, I mean, I guess we need to give compassion and empathy to the trolls as well, because eventually, goblins actually ruled the world. All right, well, love you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for dropping in. It means a lot. Johnny, sorry I had to leave you alive the other day, but we were having a good old chat, and stay classy. I know I struggle with that, but I probably am more so than a lot of people on here, Ezekiel. I've just got a bit of a potty mouth because I can't stand I just hate fuckery. Maybe that's why I swear a lot. What are gnomes? Oh, gnomes are, of course, are great. They're a little bit like wombles. So gnomes are definitely great, but they're very mischievous and they are too fond of a good thing. And yeah, they're in very short supply as well. You've never caught a live, Connor. Yeah, right. I haven't done any for ages because I'm really crappy at them, and also because I was having a bit of a break from YouTube because it gets me down a lot sometimes. So I've been trying to watch a lot less, involve myself a lot less, and really limit it. But this thing has just really heated me up again, and so is the Russell Brand. I did make a video talking about what I thought about Russell Brand and the way people are talking about him, the way he's talking about himself. And you know, more where you just play and sing too, Johnny, because I think people like that. I wish more people would turn up to those sort of lives. And just, you know, on a Sunday afternoon and things like that, you know. I know I do have a bad mouth, but hey, maybe it's my generation. I don't know. I actually try to pull it back on here, but then I think, look, you know, I try to really be authentic. It's Neanderthalish, but you can look past it. Oh, why, thank you. All right, well, look, I've dragged myself along here long enough. I am actually going to make a short so that more people can see my theory. I guess it's not a theory. I think it's blatant facts. I think what we've discussed here are blatant facts that the defense are just, you know, their slip is showing, so to speak. All right, I really am going to go. Thank you. Yes, so good to see you here, Francesca, too. Thank you. You do pop in quite regularly, actually. And I love the things you've got to say because and you're watching as much of these things as I am, maybe. I don't know. So it's good to get your perspective. Because sometimes, yeah, I feel like I'm a lonely ship at sea at night, or, you know, because sometimes I feel like my opinion is only mine. Anyway, see you later. Enjoy the afternoon or the night or the morning, everybody. And yeah, I'll see you soon. There's going to be heaps more to discuss. Well, that's exactly the people I'm talking about, Ezekiel, that as soon as I start a live, people want to come in here and try to unnerve me and make me feel like crap and put me off and try and, you know, suck me in and then throw things at me and things like that. And they're just, and you know, those people I have no respect for. They're just mutants, like quite cave dwellers, troglodytes. If you've got time to do that, see, I made a video around the Morphew days of when I had to stop talking about Morphew because of cyberbullying and trolling, and I made a video discussing the research on what type of people are cyberbullies, what makeup is in there, and who the trolls are, and the sadism that is inherent in cyberbullies, and that sort of thing. And, you know, that they're not innocuous, okay? They know exactly what they're doing and they get pleasure from it. And even, okay, arcing up and everything, but, you know, they're true scum. They're dangerous because they have real world effect on people that can't handle it. And if you're someone that cares about people's mental health, about well-being, about human experience and condition, then you will be just naturally repulsed by these people, that they repulse you. They don't have, and a lot of them have a strong, powerful cognitive empathy. It's not empathy as we know it. It's the empathy that psychopaths can tap into. They know how humans feel, respond, what they need, how they react, and they intentionally do things, and they enjoy it. There's a it's sadism. So yes, they get satisfaction from it. It's very dark. It's very dark. These are not people who fit into society, and they mask, but when they're online, they just go for it, boots and all, and they're passionate about it, and some of them are very good at it, and never underestimate what they can do to people, because they are responsible for people going into deep depressions, people self-harming, sometimes to the extent that people are successful in killing themselves. That they're just scum. They're not even to be ignored or whatever. They should be called out at every turn for the slime, for the muck that they are. Sorry, so that's how I feel. Yeah, I really do. I hate them. Yeah, I think they're just quite disgusting, and they don't deserve the time of day from people. And I am not trying to virtue signal that I am a good person, or kind and do the right things and everything. I'm not. And I'm highly emotional, and I'm very judgmental, and I'm all sorts of terrible things. But I'm not a cyberbully, and I'm not a troll, and I don't appreciate the cyberbullying I get and the trolling I get. And you get to know it. You see it nearly before they've got the second sentence out. You instantly know. And come down here, Ezekiel. Come and live in Australia. Yeah, they probably wouldn't say it to your face. Yeah, no, but those people. You just get a sense. It's just in person too. They're repellent. Okay, they're repellent. You do know humans with warmth and depth, and without those things that don't like to harm. That you do know. Okay, yeah, it's awful when you meet them, and you should just avoid them like the plague. And actually, in real life, never ever call them out in person, and never respond. Just walk away. See you guys later. Bye.